Welcome to Patscast. I'm Brad Whitaker with the news of Bill O'Brien leaving for Ohio State last week. The New England Patriots now have a vacancy at the offensive coordinator position, and candidates are finally starting to emerge as two will be interviewing for the position early this week. Today, former Patriots tight ends coach Nick Caley will interview for the role. If you're unfamiliar, Caley spent many years in New England, starting back in 2015 as an offensive assistant before he was promoted very quickly to tight ends coach 2 seasons later, where he stayed in that role until the end of the 2022 season. He also had a brief stint, not just as the tight ends coach, but as the fullbacks coach as well, when the Patriots had a fullback-heavy offense, which they really have not in the Mac Jones era. But while Kayley doesn't have a lot of play calling experience, he's a really strong fit for an offensive coordinator role. He will eventually get that job, whether it's in New England or somewhere else. He's very high energy, a great teacher, and has certainly earned a shot at this role. Many were expecting that he would ultimately be the offensive coordinator after the 2021 season when Josh McDaniels left for the Las Vegas Raiders, but Bill Belichick decided to opt for the strange Matt Patricia, Joe Judge experiment instead. Understandably, Caley decided to leave after that debacle. He did spend one more year with the weird Judge-Patricia thing going on, but he said, I'm getting the hell out of here, which he did, and he had some offensive coordinator interviews heading into the 2022 season with the Jets and the Texans, but ultimately landed in the same tight end coaching role with the Rams, and has done a pretty good job according to those around him. Look, Caley would understand what works in New England right away based off of his experience. He would fit like a glove. I think he probably feels wronged that he earned that role, and Belichick screwed him going with a guy who had never coached offense before and did a terrible job. And then when it was evident they wanted to go with a more experienced offensive coordinator and brought in Bill O'Brien, Nick Caley started looking elsewhere. I give credit to Jerod Mayo for recognizing that and giving Caley a shot at interviewing for the role, and I hope he gets it, because I think Nick Caley will eventually be a very good offensive coordinator. Certainly worked his way up to that position, and I think he has a really good shot. That being said, perhaps a more likely offensive coordinator candidate, maybe even a better candidate, is interviewing tomorrow, also from the Rams, pass game coordinator and quarterbacks coach Zach Robinson. Now, Robinson is entirely a product of the Sean McVay system. So if you're looking for someone who's really going to come in and fully modernize the Patriots offense, Zach Robinson would be that guy. He's worked as an assistant QB coach in 2019 for the Rams, was promoted to assistant wide receiver coach in 2020 before he went back to assistant QB coach in 2021, and then spent the last 2 seasons with a bigger promotion as the pass game coordinator and quarterbacks coach. He's only 37 years old. He keeps being promoted, so there's a lot of upside there for Zach Robinson. Robinson, if you don't know, also played a major role in getting Baker Mayfield to where he is today. We saw how good Baker Mayfield looked, especially in these postseason games. Didn't have a great interception on Sunday there to end the game, but they had a shot to really upset the Lions, and really impressed with what Baker's done in Tampa, exceeding what Tom Brady did his last year with the Buccaneers. Baker really fit well into that role. Had some struggles early on, but really showed his maturity level and that he can be their quarterback of the future in Tampa. He is a free agent, so maybe he'll sign somewhere else, but in all likelihood, I would expect the Buccaneers to stick with him, considering they were really the surprise of this NFL season. Give a lot of credit to Baker and Todd Bowles and their new offensive coordinator in Tampa for doing that. But Zach Robinson was the one that kind of reignited Baker's career. If you don't remember last year, Baker was kind of picked up by the Rams late in the season, and he ended up playing, I think, a game or two or something, and won a game surprisingly, and looked really good, and then that's how he landed the job in Tampa ultimately. So give Zach Robinson the credit for reviving Baker and getting him there. He also did a similar thing with Carson Wentz this season, who didn't play a lot but looked a lot better than he did when he was in Indy. Probably still going to be a backup going forward, but really did a good job getting Carson Wentz to where he is today. Many expected him to be the offensive coordinator of the Chargers this season. He interviewed for the job, but they ultimately went with Kellen Moore, which probably was the wrong decision in my opinion in hindsight. The Rams were really surprised to see Zach Robinson back. So he will get an offensive coordinator job similar to Nick Caley eventually. He certainly earned it and has been promoted. He's also a former player, didn't do a lot in the NFL, kind of bounced around from practice squad to practice squad. Was actually drafted by the Patriots in the 7th round, but was ultimately cut after his first season. And then went to a number of teams after that. But really, he's more of a coach, more of a teacher, and he's done a really good job there with the Rams. Certainly would modernize the offense and has a little bit of an understanding of the old school Patriots offense. This might be best case scenario for the Patriots if Jerod Mayo does indeed want to modernize the offense to more of a Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay style system. So we'll see what happens there. If it comes between Kayley and Robinson, I would lean toward Robinson because of that upside, but I'd probably be a lot happier if it's Kayley just because he really did get screwed over with the Matt Patricia situation. So Patriots are in a good spot either way if they go with either of those guys. Now, still no word on the obvious candidate we're all talking about, Josh McDaniels, and whether or not he will get an interview with the team. Many believe he will ultimately follow Bill Belichick wherever he decides to go, whether that's Atlanta or somewhere else. A lot of Buffalo Bills fans want Belichick there after their loss yesterday. Got to feel bad for the Bills. They really need a little bit more to get over that hump and get past Kansas City. And it seems like they're running out of time in Buffalo to do that, especially with Josh Allen's heavy contract that's going to limit some of that cap space. So maybe McDaniels decides to go there, and that's why the Patriots aren't interviewing him for offensive coordinator because they expect him to go with Belichick or look to other roles. Now, McDaniels does have to interview. He's still being paid by the Raiders for, I think, 3 more seasons, getting paid a lot of money. His family is in New England, so there is a lot of comfortability there, but maybe he just wants to move on and do something else or know what works and go back with Belichick. But hopefully we'll get more news on that in the coming days. Now, Scott Zolak offered a really interesting theory the other day on if the Patriots actually do decide to go with Josh McDaniels. He says, if that does happen, I would not expect the Patriots to take a Drake May or Jaden Williams with the number 3 overall pick. Perhaps the plan would be you take a Bo Nix or a J.J. McCarthy or perhaps Michael Penix Jr. in the 2nd or 3rd round and try to rekindle Mac Jones. I know, we all want to move on from Mac Jones, but we know the two worked very well together at Mac Jones' rookie year. Mac Jones finished 2nd in the voting for Rookie of the Year. Probably would have gotten it in most seasons, but it was an exceptional year for Jamar Chase, who ended up winning Rookie of the Year that season. They had the number 6 ranked offense in the NFL with Mac Jones, and you have to give Josh McDaniels most of the credit for that when you look at what Mac Jones did the last couple of years. So maybe if they did indeed try to opt for bringing back Josh McDaniels as offensive coordinator, you draft one of those quarterbacks in the 2nd or 3rd round, and then you have an open QB competition between Bo Nix, Penix, or McCarthy with Mac Jones and maybe Bailey Zappi, and see what happens there. And you give him some weapons. You draft Marvin Harrison. You get a tackle in the 2nd and 3rd round. You bring back Owenu. There's a lot that you could do there, and you also have a lot of money to spend in free agency to go after a Mike Evans or a Michael Pittman Jr. Patriots can really turn around that receiving core very quickly if that's the route they decide to do. If they want to deal with the quarterback position in another way, you draft Marvin Harrison, you get a big name wide receiver, you pair him with Demario Douglas, bring back Kendrick Bourne, which it sounds like they might, and Hunter Henry, who Jerod Mayo in an interview with WEEI said very good things about. Suddenly you go from one of the worst receiving cores in the league to one of the best. It's an idea. There's a lot of ways to slice it, but if they go with McDaniels, do not expect them to draft a quarterback early, at least according to Scott Zolak. Could go either way, but we'll see there. But many believe he will follow Bill Belichick instead. wherever he decides to go, which right now seems to be leaning toward the Atlanta Falcons with his second interview there. Should be noted, the Patriots still have to be in compliance with the Rooney Rule and interview. I believe it's 2 minority candidates still for the offensive coordinator job. Perhaps they've had those interviews already and it just hasn't been out publicly. We found that out with the Falcons, that they've done a number of interviews. They're in compliance with the Rooney Rule, and they're probably going to bring in Belichick. So I would love to see the Patriots at least get an interview with Eric Bieniemy. He's the guy I wanted to be the head coach. Now, Bieniemy rubs a lot of people the wrong way. I guess he is a very tough coach. If you thought Bill O'Brien and Bill Belichick were tough, well, Eric Bieniemy is a whole nother animal, right? Like, he's tough, but we saw all the things he did in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, and there are reports he's not very happy with what happened in Washington. It would be a bit of a lateral move for him, being an offensive coordinator for his third team in 3 seasons, but I would love for the Patriots to at least give him a shot, considering all he did in Kansas City. Not just for Rooney Rule reasons. I think he would be the best candidate available, but there are issues there with players and coaches being rubbed the wrong way by Eric Bieniemy. But I'd love to see him get a shot, just to bring someone in that would modernize the offense and have a very different looking offense in New England. It would be interesting. So that's what I hope, but we'll see what the Patriots have to do. But right now, the 2 candidates are Nick Caley and Zach Robinson. So as a betting man, I would say put your money on one of those 2 guys, because that's what's being reported. And generally what's being reported is the guy who's ultimately going to be there. So we'll see what happens. But speaking of Mac Jones, a report came out from Boston Sports Journal's Greg Bedard saying Patriots teammates were not happy seeing Mac Jones make an appearance at Jerod Mayo's introductory press conference last week. If you were watching or looking at photos afterwards, Mac Jones was there, smiling, socializing, wearing his Patriots sweats. And Greg Bedard reported that a team source said, "Everyone's watched him play. They've watched him act like a prima donna. The team is sick of it. Everyone's sick of it." And he added, "He was in workout gear, which is ironic since he cleared his entire locker at the end of the season. Not a single hanger, completely empty. I mean, come on, man." Now, I'm going to defend Mac Jones a little bit because, look, he is still under contract with the New England Patriots. Whether they decide to move him toward the draft or keep him as a backup or a third string, he's still fairly cheap because he's a rookie quarterback. But Mac has always spent his off seasons working out at Gillette Stadium, and his issues are not a lack of discipline or not a lack of smarts or football IQ. He's just a bit of a head case. When the going gets tough, he gets pressured, and certainly we saw that build up. Was put in a bad situation. 3 offensive coordinators in 3 seasons. Will be 4 now, wherever he goes, even if he stays in New England. Obviously has not had a lot of weapons at receiver. The offensive line, particularly early in the season in New England, was very bad. They were better last year, but still not great with Matt Patricia. We saw what he did with Josh McDaniels. It's a tough spot Mac Jones has been in, but I would not give up on him just yet. If he's a starting quarterback for the Patriots, yes, I would be concerned. But him showing up to work still, working out at the facility, putting in the work, that's not something you should be complaining about. Give Mac Jones credit. He can perhaps revive his career. Baker Mayfield revived his career. It's something that can be done. We've seen it happen with quarterbacks before. I would love to see him get traded to the Niners, be the backup for Brock Purdy in the future, and get a shot at a starting job eventually again. I think Mac Jones has all the tools. Hopefully he lifts a little bit of weights and strengthens that arm a little and works on throwing to the sideline and getting rid of the ball quickly to the sides of the field, because defenses just clog the middle, and that's where Mac's struggles really started to come from, not to mention the weak personnel he was working with in New England. Now, Greg Bedard is getting a lot of heat from this report, from Patriots fans who are expressing the same concerns as I am, like, hey, give the guy credit for still showing up to work and doing what needs to be done. He was very mature being the backup when Bailey Zappi took over, and he was an emergency third-string quarterback the last game of the season. Mac was still showing up, still smiling, doing all the things a quarterback is supposed to be doing. So nobody should complain about that, but I'm also not going to give Greg Bedard a lot of heat. He's just reporting what people are telling him. And no, he's not going to give up his sources. That's not what reporters do. They don't give up their sources. They need to have trust that their sources are going to remain anonymous. And it's up to the reporter to report accurate information, which Greg Bedard has done. He was on top of the Bill O'Brien departure last week before anyone else. I had not heard from anyone that Bill O'Brien was moving on. The only person saying that was Greg Bedard saying, in all likelihood, Bill O'Brien will be going somewhere else. And we found out on Friday or late Thursday night that he would indeed be going to Ohio State. So give Greg Bedard credit. He has good sources within the organization, and he's just reporting on what people are telling him. So, look, Mac Jones going to keep showing up and being mature and doing what he needs to do, even if he is a bit of a prima donna when the going gets tough. And like I said, there is an argument the team shouldn't give up on Mac just yet, particularly if they do bring back Josh McDaniels, seeing how well those two work together, and if they decide to go with the QB in the second or third round instead and draft a Marvin Harrison Jr., then you have an open competition with Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, and whoever that quarterback is that they brought in via the draft. Would love to see a rebound story for Mac Jones, whether it's in New England or somewhere else. I hope it works out for him because he was put in a tough spot. And look, he's going to do well in a QB competition. Like he's a great QB in training camp when they had the red jerseys on, when he's not being hit. So he could certainly earn that role again if it is an open QB competition and they don't get a Drake May or a Jaden Daniels in the draft. But we'll see. A lot of open questions. Who's going to be the offensive coordinator? I'm sure there's going to be more interviews happening. A lot of potential news about defensive coordinator. I know DeMarcus Covington is going to get an interview. I think he's earned the job with all he's done with that defensive line, elevating Christian Barmore to what he is now, working with Matthew Judon. There's so many good things to say about DeMarcus Covington, but we'll see more. There's Ted Lukabu being interviewed as well. More defensive coordinator candidates, perhaps more offensive coordinator candidates. They don't have a lot of offensive staff right now, so there's going to be a lot to fill out there. Maybe they bring in guys for interviews and put them in other roles if they don't get the job. That's what often happens. We'll be here to cover it at Pat's Cast the rest of the way. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like this video and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. We'll be back the rest of the week to cover all the breaking news out of Foxborough.